On November 12, 2025, in Philadelphia, a machine struck a piece of metal for the last time. The penny is dead after 232 years in circulation. We were told this saves government money. But when you bury a coin, the bill doesn't disappear. It just quietly moves onto specific people. And I'm about to show you exactly who. In this video, there are 3 things that flip the whole nice savings story on its head. First, why the savings everyone applauded turns out to be half of it just a numbers trick. Second, you are actually charged a small rounding fee and nobody you ever voted for decided which way it goes. And third, the coin that's really burning through budget money isn't the penny at all. And by killing the penny, the government just made that coin's problem worse. You'll see what I mean in a second. Let's start with the official version, the one they sold to the public. In 2024, 1 penny cost the Treasury 3.69 cents to make. That's almost 4 times what it's actually worth. And here's the funny part. This wasn't just for a year or 2. For 19 years straight, this coin cost more to make than it was worth. In 2024 alone, the penny lost the government about $85 million. Just think about how absurd that is. You make a coin worth 1 cent, it costs you almost 4 to produce, and you do that billions of times a year. Any sane person would have shut this down a long time ago. In February 2025, the order finally came down from the top. Enough is enough. And on November 12th, they held that ceremony in Philadelphia. The final press strike, solemn faces, a special commemorative coin. The Treasury put out a nice number too, $56 million a year saved on materials alone. Sounds like a clean win for common sense. Hold on to that word, clean. In a couple of minutes, it won't look so clean anymore. Now here's what didn't make the headlines. The penny stopped being minted, but prices didn't change. Milk cost $3.49, coffee still costs $2.99. That old trick of ending everything in 9 is alive and well. And when you pay cash, the register still has to settle the total somehow, without a coin that no longer exists. The fix they came up with is simple. Round the nearest 5 cents. If the total ends in 1, 2, 6, or 7, it rounds down. If it ends in 3, 4, 8, or 9, it rounds up. By the way, old pennies didn't just disappear overnight. They're still legal tender. The mint just stopped making new ones. But here's the important part. All of this only applies to cash. Pay with a card or your phone, and you're charged down to the exact cent. Not a fraction more, not a fraction less. This is usually where people say, so what? It's fair, right? You overpay a cent here, you save a cent there, and on average, it evens out. And the numbers seem to back that up. Federal Reserve economists actually sat down and calculated this so-called rounding tax, and it came out to about $6 million a year for the entire country. Let that across every person in America and you get a fraction of a cent. That's basically nothing. So, am I making a big deal out of nothing? $6 million spread across the whole country. Who cares, right? Actually, no. This is exactly where the story everyone's been repeating word for word starts falling apart. Because this fair, symmetrical system has a hole in it, and that hole is where the real question falls through. Who actually ends up paying? And I'll say this up front, it's not about the amount. It's about the fact that nobody voted on which way the rounding goes. Someone else decided that for you. In the US, there is no federal law at all about how to round. Not a single one. And to show you why that matters, let's head north to Canada. They went through this exact same thing 12 years before we did, and unlike the US, they actually did it right. In May 2012, Canada's finance minister personally stood at the press and struck the last Canadian penny in Winnipeg. And starting February 4th, 2013, the mint stopped distributing pennies to banks. The reason was the same one. The coin cost more than it was worth. Here's the kicker though, the Canadian penny only costs 1.6 cents to make. That's almost half of what the American penny cost. So not only was this a losing proposition, we kept losing twice as much on it for a full 12 years after our neighbors had already pulled the plug. But Canada did the one thing the US completely dropped the ball on. They wrote clear rules ahead of time for everyone. Round only the final total on the receipt after tax. Fair in both directions. Cards and checks kept getting charged down to the exact cent, same as before. And people were told to either take their loose change to the bank or donate it. The country didn't fall apart over it. If anything, people started holding their piggy banks into branches and deposits actually spiked. Over the course of a century, Canada had minted 35 billion of these coins, and up to 6 billion of them were just sitting around in drawers, couch cushions, and ashtrays. And now here's my favorite part of this whole story. A guy outside Montreal named Roger Guittard decided to test this out for himself. For an entire year, 365 purchases, he tracked every single rounded transaction. Down 2 cents here, up 5 cents there. And you know what he ended up with after a full year? He came out ahead by 89 cents. The stores didn't take him for a ride over 12 months. He took them for 89 cents. That's how symmetry actually plays out in real life. When there's one clear rule for everyone, all of this back and forth washes out to basically zero. Though, to be fair, there's a wrinkle here too. One Canadian economist ran the numbers specifically on grocery stores and found that rounding gets slightly tilted in the store's favor there, about $3 million a year nationwide. But split that across every individual store, and you're looking at maybe $150 a year. That's not profit, that's pocket change. Now let's come back home to the US. Canada gave everyone one rule, which is exactly why their story turned out boring and predictable. The US has no rule at all, and that changes everything. Instead of one small predictable tilt across the whole country, you get a separate lottery at every single store. This one rounds down, the one across the street rounds up, and there's no way to know ahead of time which one you're walking into. One big chain has already come out and said it. We round down in the customer's favor. Respect, honestly. Meanwhile, someone else looks at this completely differently, rounds up, and those cents quietly pile up in the register. And there's nothing you can do about it because there's no law against it. See where this is going? Every single cash purchase with rounding has a winner and a loser. And whether that loser is you or the store isn't decided by fairness. It's decided by however that specific register happens to be set up. It barely made a dent in Canada because there was just one tiny uniform tilt nationwide. In the US, there are now millions of these tiny tilts and none of them agree with each other. And now for the part that really stings. You might be asking, who even pays with cash anymore? The Federal Reserve's numbers answer that pretty clearly. People over 55 pay in cash almost twice as often as younger people. And overall, cash use skews disproportionately toward people who are older and lower income. People who might not have a card, who don't trust apps, who aren't thrilled about their bank tracking every purchase, who still carry bills and a handful of change the old-fashioned way. Meanwhile, someone paying with a card never enters this lottery at all. They're charged exactly what's on the price tag every single time. And that's the real answer to who's actually paying for this. It's not some abstract everyone. It's specifically the people paying cash, which on average skews older and poorer. Sure, the amount is tiny, I'm not arguing with that, but the principle behind it is toxic. When you spread a tiny cost across millions of transactions with no rules attached, the person who ends up paying for it is the one who's least likely to be checking their change. And here's where it gets interesting. On July 14th, 2026, the House of Representatives passed a bill called the Common Sense Act. And buried inside it is a requirement that the Federal Reserve study exactly this: how the penny shortage and the rounding hit older Americans, low-income households, and people without a bank account. Congress didn't stumble onto that question. They wrote it into the bill. But look at what the bill actually does. It lets stores round. That's them. Doesn't make them. The lottery didn't get shut down. It got a permission slip. And the Senate hasn't even held a hearing on its version yet. As for now, nothing changes. Oh, and one more line in there. It gives the Treasury the green light to start designing a new, cheaper nickel. Now, why would they need that? And by the way, that's not even the biggest surprise here. Remember I promised you a coin that's really burning through money? Well, it's not the penny. It's the nickel. Well, look at this gap. The penny cost the Treasury 3.7 cents. The nickel in 2024 cost almost 14 cents to make. 14 cents for a coin worth 5, nearly 3 times its face value. For every dollar's worth of nickels put into circulation, the government is losing about $1.75. Now put it together. The penny is gone. Prices are still set in cents. So what do you use to make change and round to the nearest 5? Nickels, obviously. And the estimates say that once the penny is gone, nickels will be needed in something like a third or maybe even a 40% of all cash transactions. See the irony yet? The government killed off a coin that was losing a little money. And in doing so, it drove up demand for a coin that loses way more. That clean $56 million savings figure is already shrinking right in front of us, eaten alive by all the extra nickels now being minted. And Federal Reserve researchers throw in one more unpleasant detail. If they decide to kill the nickel too in the name of savings, rounding would have to move to the nearest 10 cents. And that would blow up this whole rounding tax by almost 10 times, up to around $50 million a year. This story, we're at the end of beginning. We're just at a beginning. So here's the short version. So it actually sticks. The penny wasn't killed to spite you, and there was no secret plot behind it. It really did cost more than it was worth. No argument there. But the promised savings has a hole in it, and that hole is the nickel, which we now need more of than ever. And this rounding tax, tolling it a tax is generous. It's really a lottery, and the register at each store decides which way it spins, not any law. And the same people keep spinning that lottery over and over, the ones paying with cash. Nobody paying by card ever plays this game, not once. And now here's the part that made watching this worth your while, what to actually do about this. There's one simple trick that helps. Only the final total on the receipt gets rounded after tax, not each item separately. So if you split up your cash purchases into a bunch of small receipts, you're just multiplying the number of times you get rounded against. And one combined receipt works out better than 5 small ones. And if you don't want to play this lottery at all, pay with a card or your phone number. That's always exact to the cent. And one last thing, all this fuss over the penny is just the warm-up. The nickel is next in the line. And when that day comes, the same questions, who rounds, which way, and who actually pays for it won't be whispered anymore. They'll be 10 times louder. Such a small coin, and it exposed such a massive problem. The bill never actually disappears. It just moves on to whoever's least likely to be watching their change.